Padme's fate is also sealed in this timeline. When Vader goes to Mustafar to eliminate the Separatist leaders, she follows him as in our original timeline. But this version of Vader, fresh from killing Yoda and hardened even further, doesn't hesitate when she questions his actions. He force chokes her with cold efficiency, killing her and their unborn children. Luke and Leia Skywalker are never born. The hope they represented, the redemption they eventually brought their father, vanishes with them. The galaxy enters a dark age that makes the original Imperial era look merciful by comparison. Without Luke to eventually redeem him, without the crack in his armor that compassion for his son provided, Vader becomes the perfect Sith enforcer. He hunts down every Force-sensitive child born in the Empire, either killing them or taking them to be trained as Inquisitors. He crushes rebellions before they can form. He serves Palpatine without question or hesitation for decades, becoming more machine than man, not just physically, but spiritually. The Rebel Alliance, if it forms at all, is weak and scattered. Without Leia's leadership, without Luke's inspiration, without the legend of Jedi returning to challenge the Empire, the Resistance lacks focus and hope. Bail Organa tries to organize opposition, but without the Skywalker twins to rally around, the rebellion never gains the momentum it needs. One by one, rebel cells are discovered and eliminated. Vader personally oversees many of these operations, his efficiency terrifying. Decades pass. Palpatine ages but doesn't die, using dark side techniques to extend his life far beyond natural limits. Vader remains his enforcer, unchanged, unquestioning, a living weapon without conscience or mercy. The Empire becomes permanent, entrenched, seemingly eternal. The Jedi become a myth, then less than a myth. Children born in this era don't even believe they ever existed. The Force itself seems to fade from the galaxy, or perhaps it simply withdraws, waiting for a time when light might return. But let's explore a different path. What if the duel goes differently? What if Yoda, drawing on 900 years of experience and the clarity that comes from having nothing left to lose, manages to defeat Anakin? Let's rewind to that moment in the council chamber, when they're locked in combat, both drawing on reserves of strength that seem infinite but aren't. Yoda recognizes something crucial during the fight. Anakin is powerful, perhaps the most naturally gifted Force user Yoda has ever encountered, but he's unstable. The dark side gives him strength but also makes him reckless. Every attack is fueled by emotion, which means every attack can be predicted if you understand the emotions driving it. And Yoda, having trained Anakin since he was a boy, understands those emotions better than anyone except perhaps Obi-Wan. The Grand Master shifts his strategy. Instead of meeting Anakin's power head-on, he begins to evade, to redirect, to use Anakin's momentum against him. It's a technique Yoda has perfected over centuries, the essence of Ataru combined with philosophical understanding of the Force. He doesn't try to overpower Anakin. He waits for Anakin to overextend himself, which, driven by rage and desperation, he inevitably does. The moment comes when Anakin unleashes a devastating overhead strike, channeling all his dark side power into one killing blow. It's the same technique he'll one day use against Obi-Wan on the Death Star, but here, now, he's younger and more aggressive. Yoda doesn't block. He sidesteps, letting the crimson blade slam into the floor with enough force to crack the stone. For a fraction of a second, Anakin is off balance, committed to the strike, unable to defend. Yoda's counterattack is precise and merciless. His green blade cuts through Anakin's right arm at the elbow. Anakin screams and stumbles backward, his severed limb falling to the floor, his lightsaber clattering away. The pain is excruciating, both physical and psychological. He's been defeated. The Chosen One, the most powerful Jedi of his generation, has been bested by a 900-year-old master who barely reaches his knee. The humiliation compounds the agony. He collapses to his knees, clutching the cauterized stump where his arm used to be. And for a moment, the yellow fades from his eyes again. The real Anakin resurfaces, broken and defeated and drowning in guilt. Yoda approaches slowly, his lightsaber still ignited but held low, non-threatening. He's breathing hard, exhausted from the battle, but there's compassion in his ancient eyes. This is the moment where everything could change. Anakin is vulnerable, his dark side confidence shattered, his connection to Palpatine's conditioning weakened by shock and pain. If Yoda can reach him now, if he can pull Anakin back from the brink, the galaxy's future transforms completely. Lost you or not, Yoda says softly. Save you we still can. but choose you must. Choose the light even now, even after all you have done. He extends his small hand toward Anakin, offering redemption, offering forgiveness, offering a path back from the darkness. It's an extraordinary gesture, especially standing among the bodies of the Jedi Anakin murdered, the younglings whose lives he stole. But this is what separates the Jedi from the Sith. The Jedi believe in redemption, in second chances, in the power of compassion to overcome evil. Anakin stares at that extended hand. He wants to take it. Every good part of him, every piece of the Jedi he used to be, screams at him to accept Yoda's offer. But the guilt is overwhelming. How can he come back from what he's done? How can he face Obi-Wan, face Padme, face himself knowing he murdered children? The weight of his crimes crushes him. He believes he's gone too far, that redemption is impossible, that the only path left is to fully embrace the darkness, because at least then, he doesn't have to feel the guilt. Before he can make a choice, before he can reach for Yoda's hand or reject it, Emperor Palpatine arrives. The Sith Lord has been monitoring the situation, has felt through the Force that his apprentice is in danger. He appears at the chamber entrance, and his reaction is immediate and vicious. He sees Yoda standing over his defeated apprentice, sees the possibility of losing Anakin, and he unleashes the full fury of the dark side. Force lightning erupts from Palpatine's hands, but it's not aimed at Yoda, it's aimed at Anakin. The Emperor is willing to kill his own apprentice rather than lose him to the light. The reasoning is pure Sith pragmatism. If Vader is going to be turned back to the Jedi, if he's going to become a weapon against Palpatine, then he must be destroyed. Better to lose a powerful apprentice than gain a powerful enemy. But Yoda is faster. He interposes himself between Palpatine and Anakin, his lightsaber absorbing the lightning, his small body serving as a shield for the fallen Sith Lord. It's a choice that surprises everyone, especially Anakin. Yoda is protecting him, even after everything he's done, even after he killed Jedi and tried to kill Yoda himself. The act of selfless compassion breaks through Anakin's despair in a way words never could. The battle shifts. Now it's Yoda versus Palpatine, the two most powerful Force users of the era, fighting over the soul of Anakin Skywalker. This is the duel we saw in Revenge of the Sith, but here in the Jedi Temple instead of the Senate Chamber, and with much higher stakes. Palpatine is furious, unleashing attacks of devastating power. Yoda meets each one, his centuries of experience allowing him to counter the Emperor's techniques. Anakin, still kneeling, still clutching his severed arm, watches the battle and finally understands. Palpatine doesn't care about him. The Emperor was willing to kill him the moment he became inconvenient. All the promises about power, about saving Padme, about bringing order to the galaxy, they were all lies designed to manipulate him. Yoda, on the other hand, is risking his life to protect him even after he betrayed everything the Jedi stood for. The contrast couldn't be clearer. With his remaining hand, Anakin reaches out through the Force. His lightsaber, lying several feet away, flies to his grasp. He ignites it, the blade still crimson because the corruption of the crystal can't be undone in a moment. But the intent behind it has changed. He stands, swaying slightly from pain and exhaustion, and positions himself beside Yoda, master and former student, standing together against the Sith Lord who manipulated them both. Palpatine's eyes widen with shock and rage. His most powerful weapon has turned against him. His carefully constructed plans are collapsing. He intensifies his assault, calling upon dark side powers that few Sith in history have mastered. The chamber itself begins to crumble under the onslaught. Walls crack. The ceiling starts to collapse. Debris rains down on the combatants. Yoda and Anakin fight in concert, their connection through the Force allowing them to coordinate without words. Yoda's ancient wisdom and Anakin's raw power complement each other perfectly. They're not just defending anymore. They're driving Palpatine back, forcing him toward the shattered windows overlooking Coruscant. The Emperor realizes he's losing, that even his mastery of the dark side isn't enough against these two fighting together. Palpatine makes a desperate move. He feints toward Yoda, then pivots and unleashes his most powerful attack directly at Anakin. The Force lightning is concentrated, intense enough to kill instantly. Anakin tries to block with his lightsaber, but he's weakened, one-armed, and off balance. The lightning gets through, courses through his body, and he screams as the dark side energy burns him from the inside out. But the attack leaves Palpatine vulnerable for a fraction of a second. Yoda doesn't hesitate. His lightsaber strikes true. Obi-Wan finally emerges from his hiding place, rushing to Anakin's side. The reunion is agonizing. Obi-Wan is torn between relief that his brother survived and horror at what he became. Anakin can barely look at him, the shame too intense. But Obi-Wan, like Yoda, chooses compassion. He helps carry Anakin from the temple, getting him medical attention, beginning the long and painful process of healing both physical and psychological wounds. In this timeline, Anakin survives, but is forever changed. The injuries from Palpatine's lightning, combined with the loss of his arm, leave him disabled and scarred. He requires medical support for the rest of his life, though not to the extent of becoming the armored Vader we know. More importantly, the psychological scars run even deeper. Anakin is haunted by what he did, by the lives he took, by the trust he betrayed. He suffers from nightmares, from panic attacks, from waves of guilt that sometimes leave him non-functional for days. The Jedi Order is still destroyed, but Yoda and Obi-Wan survive to preserve its teachings. They go into hiding, taking Anakin with them, protecting him from those who would seek vengeance for his crimes. The galaxy doesn't know that Darth Vader turned back to the light. They only know that the Jedi Temple was attacked, that most of the Order was killed, and that the Republic transformed into the Empire in the chaos. Padme, when she learns what Anakin did, is devastated. She visits him in hiding, sees him broken and scarred and drowning in guilt, and she doesn't know how to reconcile the man she loved with the monster he became. Their relationship is shattered, perhaps irreparably. She's pregnant with Luke and Leia, but she's uncertain if she wants Anakin in their lives. The choice tears her apart. Eventually, Padme decides to keep the children's paternity secret. She returns to Naboo, claims they're from a brief relationship with someone else, and raises them quietly away from galactic politics. Anakin never meets his children. It's part of his penance, part of the price he pays for his crimes. He lives in exile with Yoda and Obi-Wan, helping them preserve Jedi knowledge, training in the light side to cleanse the darkness from his spirit, but never forgetting what he did, never forgiving himself. Luke and Leia grow up on Naboo, not knowing their true father. They're Force-sensitive naturally, and when they're old enough, Yoda carefully approaches Padme about training them. She's reluctant, terrified that they'll follow their father's path, but eventually she agrees. The twins are trained in secret, becoming the foundation of a new Jedi Order that will one day challenge the Empire. This timeline is more hopeful than the first, but it's still dark. Anakin's redemption is incomplete and painful. He survives, he returns to the light, but he never finds peace. The galaxy suffers under the Empire for decades until Luke and Leia, not knowing they're fighting to complete their father's redemption, lead the rebellion to victory. When they finally learn the truth about their parentage, the revelation is complicated and traumatic. They've spent their lives training under Yoda and Obi-Wan, never knowing that the scarred, broken man who occasionally helped with their training was their father. But there's a third possibility, one that's perhaps the most interesting. What if the duel between Yoda and Anakin is interrupted before either can win? What if Obi-Wan, unable to stand by while his former apprentice and his old master kill each other, intervenes at a crucial moment? Let's return to the council chamber. Yoda and Anakin are locked in combat, both exhausted, both drawing on their last reserves of strength. The fight could go either way. One mistake, one moment of weakness, and either could fall. Obi-Wan watches from the doorway, his heart being torn apart. He's supposed to be here to stop Anakin, to end the threat he represents. But seeing his former Padawan fighting for his life against Yoda makes Obi-Wan question everything. He remembers Anakin as a child, eager and talented and full of potential. He remembers training him, the frustrations and the triumphs, the way Anakin would argue with him but always ultimately listen. He remembers their friendship during the Clone Wars, fighting side by side, saving each other's lives, the bond they formed that went deeper than master and apprentice. And he remembers the prophecy that Anakin is the chosen one, destined to bring balance to the Force. What if killing him or letting him die prevents the prophecy from being fulfilled? What if there's still a chance to save him, to bring him back to the light? The questions torment Obi-Wan. But when he sees Yoda preparing a killing strike, when he realizes that in the next few seconds, one of the two people he cares about most in the galaxy will die, he makes a choice. Obi-Wan uses the Force to shove both combatants apart. It's not a gentle push. He pours all his power into it, sending Yoda flying in one direction and Anakin in the other. Both crash into walls, both are momentarily stunned. Obi-Wan steps into the center of the chamber, his lightsaber ignited, positioning himself between them.
Enough! This ends now!
Yoda recovers first, his ancient eyes focusing on Obi-Wan with a mixture of surprise and understanding. He senses what Obi-Wan is feeling, understands the conflict tearing his former student apart. Anakin takes longer to recover, his body battered and exhausted. When he finally focuses on Obi-Wan, standing between him and Yoda, his expression is complex. Relief, shame, fear, and something that might be hope all flash across his face. "Obi-Wan, you don't understand," Anakin says, his voice hoarse. "The Jedi betrayed the Republic. They were planning to overthrow the Chancellor. I had to stop them. I had to bring order." The words sound hollow even to his own ears. The conditioning Palpatine installed is fraying, weakened by exhaustion and doubt. Obi-Wan's response is quiet, but devastating. "I saw the security recordings, Anakin. I saw you murder younglings. Children, Anakin. Defenseless children who trusted you. Whatever you think you were doing, whatever you think justified it, there's no excuse for that." The pain in his voice is palpable. He's not accusing. He's grieving. The words hit Anakin like physical blows. The reality of what he's done, presented by someone whose opinion he values more than anyone, except maybe Padme, breaks through the last of his denial. The younglings' faces flash through his mind. He remembers their fear, their confusion, the way they looked at him expecting protection and received death instead. The horror threatens to overwhelm him completely. Yoda speaks, his voice gentle but firm. "A choice young Obi-Wan offers you. Die here, fighting us, or come with us. Face justice, atone for your crimes, the path of redemption. Long and painful it is, but possible it remains. Choose you must." Anakin looks between them. Obi-Wan, standing ready to defend or attack depending on what Anakin decides. Yoda, battered but unbowed, offering something Anakin doesn't deserve but desperately needs. And behind them, through the shattered windows, Coruscant spreads out, a city planet that will soon be the capital of an empire built on the corpse of the Republic he helped destroy. He thinks of Padme. She's the reason he fell. His fear of losing her, his desperate need to save her from the visions he had of her death. But would she want this? Would she want the galaxy enslaved and millions dead in exchange for her survival? He knows the answer. Padme loved democracy, loved freedom, loved justice. She would be horrified by what he's done in her name. And if she learned he murdered children? She would never forgive him. He could never forgive himself. Anakin's lightsaber deactivates. It falls from his hand and clatters to the floor. He sinks to his knees, his remaining strength finally giving out. "I'm sorry," he whispers, and it's not clear if he's speaking to Obi-Wan, to Yoda, to the ghosts of the Jedi he killed, or to himself. "I'm so sorry." Obi-Wan moves forward, his own lightsaber deactivating. He kneels beside Anakin, placing a hand on his shoulder. The gesture is careful, uncertain, because their relationship has been shattered and Obi-Wan doesn't know if it can ever be repaired. But he's willing to try. That's what being a Jedi means. You don't give up on people, even when they've done the unforgivable. Yoda approaches slowly, exhaustion finally catching up with him. He's too old for battles like this, too worn down by centuries of conflict. But he's also wise enough to recognize a turning point when he sees one. Anakin can still be saved. The Chosen One can still fulfill his destiny, though the path will be far more difficult than anyone imagined. But before they can leave, before they can figure out what comes next, Emperor Palpatine arrives. The Sith Lord has been monitoring the situation, has felt Anakin's wavering through their connection. He appears at the chamber entrance, his presence radiating dark side power and cold fury. "How touching," he says, his voice dripping with contempt. "The great Jedi offering redemption to a mass murderer. But Lord Vader belongs to me." He swore himself to the dark side. "He is mine to command." Palpatine raises his hands, and Force lightning fills the chamber. But this time, it's not aimed at any single target. It's everywhere, arcing from wall to wall, floor to ceiling, turning the council chamber into a storm of dark side energy. Yoda tries to absorb it, to redirect it, but there's too much. Obi-Wan throws up a force barrier, but it cracks almost immediately. They're all going to die here, consumed by Palpatine's hatred made manifest. Except Anakin stands. His body is broken, his spirit shattered, but he still has power. More power than any Jedi in a generation. He's still technically Palpatine's apprentice. The pain is indescribable. The lightning courses through him, burning him inside and out, searing his flesh and scarring his face. But he holds on, channeling it away from the others, refusing to let Palpatine kill anyone else because of him. This is his atonement, his penance, his way of proving that Anakin Skywalker still exists beneath the monster he became. Yoda and Obi-Wan, freed from the lightning assault, attack Palpatine together. It's not even a fight. The Emperor, having expended enormous energy in his attack, doesn't have time to defend against both of them. Yoda's lightsaber takes him in the chest while Obi-Wan's blade strikes his head. Palpatine falls, dead before his body hits the floor. The Sith are ended, just as the prophecy foretold, but at a cost no one anticipated. Anakin collapses, his body smoking, barely alive. The injuries are catastrophic. Obi-Wan and Yoda rush to him, using force healing techniques to stabilize him. But it's not enough. He needs medical attention immediately, the kind of advanced care that only the best facilities can provide. They manage to get him to a med center, using their Jedi authority to commandeer treatment, lying about what happened to explain his injuries. Anakin survives, but barely. He requires extensive cybernetic reconstruction, though not to the extent of becoming the full Vader suit. His face is scarred, his lungs damaged, his body weak, but he's alive, and more importantly, he's chosen the light. The path forward is uncertain and painful, but it exists. In this third timeline, the galaxy transforms in unexpected ways. Palpatine is dead, killed before he can fully consolidate his power. The empire he tried to build collapses into civil war as various factions fight for control. The Clone Wars end not with Imperial victory, but with chaos and confusion. The Jedi Order is still destroyed, but its three surviving masters, Yoda, Obi-Wan, and the redeemed Anakin, work to preserve its teachings and prepare for its eventual restoration. Anakin faces trial for his crimes. It's not a show trial or a formality. He genuinely faces justice for what he did, presenting himself before Republic courts and pleading guilty to multiple counts of murder. The galaxy demands his execution, and he doesn't fight it. He believes he deserves to die for what he's done. But Padme, despite everything, speaks in his defense. Not to excuse his actions, but to testify about his return to the light, about how he sacrificed himself to stop Palpatine. The court reaches a compromise. Anakin is sentenced to life imprisonment, but with the possibility of earning redemption through service. He'll be held under Jedi custody, his powers bound, his freedom restricted, but he'll be allowed to help rebuild what he destroyed. It's a sentence that satisfies no one and angers many, but it's the best solution anyone can find. Luke and Leia are born in this timeline, and Anakin meets them once, under guard, when they're infants. Padme allows it as an act of mercy, though she makes it clear their relationship is over. Anakin holds his children for a few precious moments, memorizes their faces, and then willingly returns to his imprisonment. He doesn't ask to see them again. He knows he doesn't deserve that privilege. The twins grow up knowing their father is alive but imprisoned. They know what he did and what he's doing to atone for it. When they're old enough, Yoda offers to train them, and they accept. Their training is unique, informed by their father's fall and redemption. They learn not just the light side, but also the warning signs of darkness. They become balanced Jedi, neither suppressing emotion nor being controlled by it, embodying the true balance the prophecy spoke of. Years pass. Anakin serves his sentence in isolation, meditating, studying the Force, helping Yoda and Obi-Wan compile Jedi teachings that would otherwise be lost. He never asks for forgiveness because he knows he doesn't deserve it. He simply works day after day to make some small restitution for the evil he did. When Luke and Leia are adults trained as Jedi Knights, they choose to visit their father. Padme has passed away by this point, never having fully reconciled with Anakin, but having gradually moved from hatred to a kind of sad acceptance. The meeting between Anakin and his adult children is awkward and painful. They don't know him. He doesn't really know them. But there's a connection, the Force flowing between them, and something like understanding begins to form. The twins don't forgive him. Not completely. How can you forgive someone for murdering children, even if one of those children grew up to be your father? But they acknowledge his efforts at redemption. They see that he's genuinely changed, that he's spent decades trying to make amends, and they offer something more valuable than forgiveness. They offer him a chance to help them build a better galaxy. Together, Anakin, Luke, and Leia work to establish a new Jedi Order. This one is different from what came before. It's smaller, more careful, more aware of the dangers of arrogance and attachment. Anakin's fall becomes a cautionary tale, taught to every student, a reminder that even the most powerful Jedi can be corrupted if they're not vigilant. His redemption becomes an equally important lesson, that no one is beyond saving, that the light always offers a path back, no matter how far you've fallen. Anakin never leaves custody. He remains under guard until the day he dies. Decades later, an old man surrounded by students he helped train, but never had the freedom to truly know. His last words are to Luke and Leia, thanking them for giving him a purpose, for allowing him to contribute something good to balance even a fraction of the evil he caused. Then he closes his eyes and becomes one with the Force, his spirit finally at peace after a lifetime of guilt and service. The galaxy he leaves behind is imperfect but healing. The Empire never fully formed, replaced by a restored republic that learned from the mistakes of its predecessor. The Jedi Order exists again, smaller and wiser, and the Skywalker family, despite its tragic history, becomes a symbol of redemption and hope. Luke and Leia both have children, raising them with the lessons their father learned the hardest way possible. That love without wisdom becomes attachment, that power without restraint becomes tyranny, and that the path to the dark side begins with small compromises that seem justified in the moment. All three timelines branch from that single moment in the Jedi Temple Council chamber. Yoda arriving to confront Anakin, the duel that follows, the choices made in the heat of battle. In one timeline, Anakin wins and becomes an even worse Vader than we know, serving the Empire without the crack in his armor that compassion for Luke provided. In another, Yoda wins and Anakin is redeemed but broken, living in exile and never knowing his children. In the third, Obi-Wan's intervention creates a more complex path where Anakin survives, redeems himself partially, and helps shape the next generation even while paying the price for his crimes. Each timeline has its own tragedy and its own hope. Each one demonstrates different truths about the Star Wars universe and the nature of redemption. The first shows what happens when someone falls completely, when there's no turning back and no second chances. It's the darkest timeline, but perhaps the most realistic. Sometimes people make choices so evil that redemption becomes impossible, and the galaxy simply has to endure until new heroes rise to challenge the darkness. The second timeline shows redemption achieved through immediate repentance. Anakin is defeated, chooses the light in his moment of weakness, and helps destroy Palpatine. But the cost is his connection to his children and any chance at a normal life. It's a hopeful timeline in that the Empire is weakened early. But it's also sad because Anakin never experiences the love and acceptance that Luke eventually gave him in our original story. The third timeline is perhaps the most complex and most realistic. Anakin's redemption isn't instant or clean. He survives but faces justice. He pays for his crimes while also working to make amends. His relationship with his children is distant and complicated. He never escapes the consequences of what he did, but he's also given the chance to contribute something positive. It's messy and imperfect, which is probably what real redemption would look like for someone who committed atrocities. The question at the heart of all these timelines is whether Anakin Skywalker could have been stopped at that moment. If Yoda had returned to the temple, if he'd confronted Anakin immediately after the fall, would it have made a difference? The answer seems to be yes, but the difference could manifest in multiple ways. Yoda might kill Anakin, ending the threat but also killing the Chosen One before he can fulfill his destiny. Yoda might defeat and redeem Anakin, saving him but in a way that fundamentally changes the saga. Or the confrontation might end ambiguously, with both surviving but on different paths. What makes this scenario so compelling is that it pits two of the saga's most powerful Force users against each other at a crucial moment. Yoda represents the old Jedi Order at its best, wise, compassionate, powerful, but also carrying the burden of centuries of tradition and the mistakes that tradition enabled. Anakin represents the new generation, powerful, passionate, full of potential but also vulnerable to the very human emotions the Jedi tried to suppress. Their duel would be more than just a physical confrontation. It would be a clash of philosophies, of eras, of different understandings of what it means to be a Jedi. Yoda's 900 years of experience versus Anakin's raw, unprecedented power. The ancient master who trained generations versus the student who broke every rule. The Jedi who embodied the light versus the Chosen One, who fell to darkness. And the outcome matters enormously because both of them are so important to the galaxy's fate. Yoda is the last master, the keeper of Jedi wisdom. the one who could potentially train future generations if he survives. Anakin is the chosen one, destined to bring balance to the Force, capable of either destroying the Sith or becoming their greatest weapon. The duel between them decides not just who lives or dies, but the entire future of the Force itself. In our original timeline, they never fought. Yoda went to confront Palpatine while Obi-Wan faced Anakin. It was a strategic decision that made sense. The Masters fight while the former Master and apprentice settle their personal conflict. But it also meant that Yoda never got the chance to try to save Anakin, and Anakin never had to face the judgment of the Jedi's greatest master. What if that confrontation had happened? What if Yoda, instead of fleeing after Order 66, had gone directly to the temple and found Anakin there? The duel would have been inevitable. Anakin, freshly fallen and still high on dark side power, wouldn't have backed down. Yoda, seeing what the Chosen One had become, would have had to fight. And in that fight, the destiny of the entire galaxy would be decided. The beauty of this scenario is that there's no clear answer to who would win. In their prime, both are among the most powerful Force users ever to exist. Yoda has experience, wisdom, and complete mastery of the light side. Anakin has raw power, youth, and the aggressive boost of the dark side. In other confrontations in Star Wars, we usually know who should win. Obi-Wan versus Anakin was always going to end with Obi-Wan's victory because he had the high ground, both literally and metaphorically. Yoda versus Palpatine was evenly matched but ultimately unresolved. But Yoda versus a freshly fallen Anakin? That could go either way. Anakin at this moment is at the peak of his dark side power. He's just slaughtered the Jedi Temple, channeling rage and fear and hatred into strength. He hasn't yet been injured on Mustafar, hasn't yet lost his limbs, hasn't yet been diminished by the suit. This is Anakin Skywalker at full power, the most naturally gifted Force user in a millennium, enhanced by the dark side and driven by desperate conviction that what he's doing is necessary. But Yoda is Yoda. He's survived 900 years through wisdom and skill. He's trained thousands of Jedi, has seen the rise and fall of civilizations, has faced dark side users across centuries. He knows techniques that Anakin has never encountered, has strategies refined through lifetimes of experience. And crucially, Yoda is completely committed to the light side, drawing on the Force in its purest form without the corruption that comes with dark side use. The fight would be spectacular to witness. Imagine the visual. This tiny green figure moving with impossible speed and grace, flipping and spinning through the air, his lightsaber a green blur. And opposite him, this towering warrior, all aggressive power and overwhelming strength, each strike capable of shattering stone. The contrast in their styles would be beautiful and terrifying. Anakin would fight like a force of nature, all Gemso power attacks and relentless pressure. He'd try to use his physical advantages, his strength and reach, to overwhelm Yoda. He'd channel the Force into devastating attacks, ripping chunks from the architecture and hurling them, using telekinesis to throw Yoda off balance, employing every dirty trick the dark side teaches. There would be nothing elegant about his approach. It would be pure domination, the strong crushing the weak, might making right. Yoda would respond with 900 years of accumulated skill. He'd use Anakin's aggression against him, redirecting attacks, exploiting openings that appear when someone commits too fully to offense. He'd employ the Force not as a weapon, but as an extension of his will, making the environment itself part of his defense. Every movement would be precise, efficient, perfect. No wasted energy, no unnecessary flourishes. Just pure technique refined to its absolute limit. And beneath the physical battle would be the war of wills in the Force. Anakin trying to crush Yoda with sheer power, to overwhelm him the way he's overwhelmed every other opponent. Yoda meeting that power with wisdom, with understanding of how the Force actually works, rather than just brute application. They'd be fighting on multiple levels simultaneously. Physical combat with lightsabers, telekinetic battles throwing objects and each other around, and a deeper conflict in the Force itself. Each trying to impose their understanding of the universe on the other. The emotional dimension would add another layer. Yoda would be fighting with sorrow and regret, grieving for what Anakin has become while still hoping to reach him. Every strike would carry the weight of 900 years of training Jedi, of believing in the light, of trying to guide younglings toward wisdom and peace. He'd be fighting not just to defeat Anakin, but to save him, to pull him back from the brink if possible. Anakin would be fighting with desperation and rage, but also with a twisted kind of love. He's convinced himself that everything he's doing, all the murder and betrayal, is necessary to save Padme. In his mind, Yoda represents the old, failed philosophy that would let her die. The Jedi code that denied him the power to protect those he loved. Every strike would be fueled by that conviction, by his certainty that he's right and the Jedi are wrong, even as some buried part of him screams that he's become a monster. The duel would push both of them to their absolute limits. Yoda would be forced to draw on reserves of strength he hasn't tapped in decades, making him wonder if his age has finally caught up with him. Anakin would be burning himself out, using the dark side with such intensity that it's consuming him from within, scarring not just his body but his spirit. Neither could maintain this level of combat for long. One of them would have to fall, or they'd both collapse from exhaustion, and that's where the timeline branches. The outcome depends on so many variables. Is Yoda still recovering from the draining battle in the Senate chamber? Or is he fresh? Has Anakin's massacre of the temple weakened him spiritually, creating cracks in his dark side armor? Or has it hardened his commitment? Do they fight alone, or does someone intervene? How much does Yoda hold back, trying to save Anakin rather than kill him? How much does Anakin's remaining goodness interfere with his dark side power? In analyzing this matchup, we have to consider their respective advantages and disadvantages carefully. Yoda's greatest advantage is experience. He's fought dark side users before, has seen their patterns, knows their weaknesses. He understands that the dark side gives immediate power but makes you predictable, because anger and hatred follow certain paths. He can read Anakin's emotional state and anticipate his attacks based on that. Yoda's second major advantage is efficiency. Every move he makes serves a purpose. He doesn't waste energy on showing off or intimidation. His small size, which seems like a disadvantage, is actually beneficial because he's harder to hit and can move through spaces Anakin can't follow. He's spent centuries refining his technique to compensate for his stature, turning what should be a weakness into a strength. His third advantage is clarity. Yoda's mind is unclouded by emotion. He can assess the situation objectively, make tactical decisions without anger or fear interfering. This gives him better judgment during the fight, allowing him to spot openings and avoid traps that someone fighting emotionally might miss. But Yoda also has significant disadvantages. His age is real, despite the Force sustaining him. Extended combat exhausts him more quickly than it would a younger fighter. His physical strength, even enhanced by the Force, is less than Anakin's. He can't match Anakin blow for blow in a test of pure power. And perhaps most importantly, he's handicapped by his compassion. He doesn't want to kill Anakin. He wants to save him. That hesitation could be fatal against an opponent who has no such reservations. Anakin's advantages are equally significant. His raw power is unprecedented. Even among Jedi, even among Sith, Anakin's connection to the Force is extraordinary. He can draw on energy reserves that would kill normal Force users. His physical prime means he's faster, stronger, and more durable than the ancient Yoda. He can take hits that would end the fight for someone frailer. The dark side gives Anakin another advantage. It removes his limiters. A Jedi fights with restraint, with consideration for the consequences of their actions. A Sith, especially a newly fallen one, has no such restrictions. Anakin can use techniques that would horrify his former self, can embrace tactics that the Jedi would consider dishonorable, can fight without mercy or hesitation. His emotional state, while seemingly a weakness, is also a source of power in the dark side tradition. His fear for Padme, his anger at the Jedi, his hatred of the restrictions that kept him from saving his mother, all of these fuel his strength. The more desperately he fights, the more powerful he becomes. It's a double-edged sword, but in a single duel, it gives him an edge. However, Anakin's disadvantages are serious. His lack of experience with the dark side means he's not using it efficiently. He's all power with no finesse, like someone who just discovered they have super strength and is smashing everything without thinking. A true Sith master would be more dangerous because they'd know how to channel that power precisely. Anakin is just overwhelming everything with brute force. His emotional state, while providing power, also makes him reckless and predictable. Yoda can read his intentions through the Force, can sense the rage driving each attack, can exploit the openings that appear when someone fights on pure emotion. Anakin's anger makes him strong, but also makes him sloppy. Most critically, Anakin is conflicted. He's trying to convince himself he's doing the right thing, but part of him knows he's not. That internal conflict weakens his connection to the dark side because the dark side requires absolute commitment. The slightest hesitation, the smallest flicker of doubt, creates vulnerability. And Anakin has doubt, buried deep but still present, especially when facing someone like Yoda, who represents everything he used to believe in. Given all these factors, how would the fight actually unfold? Let's imagine it in detail. The opening exchanges would favor Anakin. He'd come out aggressively, using his superior strength and reach to drive Yoda back. The Grand Master would be on the defensive initially, testing Anakin's abilities, looking for patterns. Yoda would take some hits, minor injuries that would accumulate, but not immediately disable him. As the fight progressed, Yoda would begin to adapt. He'd start exploiting Anakin's predictability, using his rage against him. When Anakin committed to a power attack, Yoda would dodge and counter-strike. When Anakin used the Force to throw objects, Yoda would redirect them back or use them as cover. The tide would start to shift as experience overcame raw power, but Anakin wouldn't give up. He'd escalate, channeling more dark side energy, accepting the pain and corruption it caused in exchange for more strength. This would create a critical moment where both fighters are at their limits, where the next exchange would decide the outcome. And that's where the variables matter most. If Yoda is fighting to kill, if he's abandoned hope of redeeming Anakin and accepted that the Chosen One has become too dangerous to live, then he probably wins. His superior technique and clearer judgment would allow him to find the opening needed for a killing strike. It would be close. Both fighters would be grievously wounded, but Yoda's experience would give him the edge in that final moment. If Yoda is fighting to subdue, trying to disable rather than kill, then Anakin's chances improve dramatically. Every moment Yoda hesitates, every strike he pulls at the last second to avoid a lethal blow, gives Anakin an opportunity. The dark side doesn't hesitate. Eventually, Anakin would exploit one of those moments of mercy and land a devastating attack. If the fight is interrupted, either by Obi-Wan's arrival or Palpatine's intervention or even clone troopers getting involved, then the outcome becomes unpredictable. New variables change everything. Obi-Wan's presence might distract Anakin enough for Yoda to win, or it might distract Yoda, worried about his former student's safety, enough for Anakin to win. Palpatine would almost certainly side with Anakin, tipping the balance in his favor. Clone troopers could go either way depending on whether they're still loyal to the Jedi or have fully embraced Order 66. The most likely scenario, given what we know about both characters, is that the fight would be interrupted before a clear victor emerged. Yoda would be winning tactically, having weathered Anakin's initial assault and turned the momentum, but Anakin would be too powerful to defeat quickly. The fight would drag on, destroying the council chamber and probably spreading to other parts of the temple. Eventually, some external factor would intervene, either forcing them apart or changing the dynamics enough that a different outcome became possible. But let's imagine the most dramatic version. What if they fought to a mutual defeat? What if both of them pushed so hard, drew so deeply on the Force, that they both collapsed simultaneously, too injured to continue, but both still alive? That would create the most interesting aftermath. Picture the scene. The council chamber is destroyed, smoking rubble where furniture used to be. The great window shattered, the floor cracked and scorched. Yoda and Anakin lie on opposite sides of the room, both barely conscious, both too weak to stand or even reach for their lightsabers. They can only stare at each other across the wreckage, both knowing they've fought to a standstill in that moment, without the adrenaline of combat, without the immediate need to attack or defend. They might actually be able to talk. Really talk, not the combat banter during the duel, but genuine communication. Yoda could ask Anakin why, could try to understand what drove him to betray everything. Anakin could explain about the visions of Padme's death, about Palpatine's promises, about his desperate need to save her, and maybe, just maybe, Yoda could reach him. Not through Force powers or Jedi philosophy, but through simple understanding. Yoda has lived 900 years. He's seen people lose those they love. He understands the pain Anakin is feeling. He could acknowledge that the Jedi Order failed Anakin, that their rules about attachment and emotion were too rigid, that they didn't give him the support he needed. That acknowledgement might be what Anakin needs to hear. Not condemnation, not judgment, but recognition that his pain is valid even if his response to it was monstrous. It might create the opening for redemption, the chance for Anakin to step back from the brink before it's too late. Of course, that's also when Palpatine would arrive. The Emperor isn't going to let his carefully corrupted apprentice slip away at the last moment. He'd appear, surveying the wreckage, and present Anakin with a choice: come with him and embrace the dark side fully, or return to the Jedi and face execution for his crimes. It's a false choice because Palpatine has no intention of letting the Jedi take Anakin. But it forces Anakin to decide what he truly wants. And that decision, made in the ruins of the Jedi Temple with Yoda watching and Palpatine manipulating, would determine the fate of the galaxy. Does Anakin choose the Emperor, becoming the Vader we know? Does he choose Yoda, beginning a difficult path to redemption? Or does he reject both, trying to forge a third way that belongs to neither Jedi nor Sith? Each choice leads to a different future. Each one creates ripples that transform the galaxy. And all of it stems from that one moment when Yoda returned to the temple and found Anakin there, surrounded by the bodies of the Jedi he killed, standing at the crossroads between redemption and damnation. This is why the scenario is so compelling. It's not just about who would win in a fight, though that's interesting enough on its own. It's about what that fight represents. The clash between old and new, between wisdom and power, between compassion and conviction. It's about whether Anakin could have been stopped at that crucial moment. Whether a different intervention might have prevented the rise of Darth Vader. The answer seems to be yes. It might have been possible, but the cost would have been enormous. Either Anakin dies, ending the prophecy before it can be fulfilled, or Yoda dies, removing the last great teacher of the Jedi Order. Or both survive but fundamentally changed, their confrontation altering their paths in ways that ripple through the entire saga. In our original timeline, they never fought. Yoda went into exile, Anakin became Vader, and it took Luke Skywalker 19 years later to finally bring redemption to his father. It was a long, painful path, but one that ultimately fulfilled the prophecy and brought balance to the Force. Would a direct confrontation between Yoda and Anakin have been better or worse? We can't know for certain, but exploring the possibilities reveals truths about both characters and about the nature of the Force itself. Yoda represents the Jedi at their best: wise, compassionate, powerful but humble, dedicated to service rather than domination. He's what the Order aspires to create in every student, the ideal that Anakin was supposed to embody. But Yoda also represents the Order's limitations: the rigid adherence to rules, the suppression of emotion, the inability to adapt to changing circumstances that ultimately left them vulnerable to Palpatine's manipulation. Anakin represents the Jedi's greatest success and their greatest failure. Success because no one in a millennium had his raw connection to the Force, his potential to reshape the galaxy for good. Failure because they couldn't give him what he needed emotionally, couldn't help him process his attachments in healthy ways, couldn't prevent him from becoming the very thing they feared most. He's the cautionary tale of what happens when power meets fear without wisdom to guide it. Their confrontation would be these two aspects of the Jedi Order fighting each other: the ancient wisdom versus the new power, the established way versus the dangerous potential, the past versus the future. And the outcome would determine which aspect prevails, which philosophy guides the galaxy going forward. If Yoda wins, it validates the traditional Jedi approach. It says that wisdom and discipline, honed over centuries, can overcome even the most powerful dark side user. It preserves the old ways and suggests that the Order just needed to be more vigilant, more strict in its teachings. The future Jedi Order that would eventually arise would look a lot like the old one, learning few lessons from its fall. If they fight to a draw, if both survive but neither wins decisively, it suggests that neither philosophy is complete. The Jedi need to incorporate some of what Anakin represents: the passion and emotional connection, while Anakin needs the discipline and wisdom that Yoda embodies. The future would have to synthesize both approaches, creating something that honors the past while acknowledging its limitations. That synthesis is probably what the Force actually wants. The prophecy spoke of bringing balance, not victory for one side or another. Balance implies both light and dark, both emotion and control, both power and wisdom. Anakin was supposed to embody that balance, but he swung too far toward darkness. Yoda embodied light, but perhaps too much, suppressing necessary aspects of being alive and human. Their confrontation, had it happened, might have been the Force's way of trying to create that balance more directly. Two extremes clashing, neither able to fully defeat the other, forced to find common ground or destroy each other trying. It's a more chaotic path to balance than the one we saw in the original saga, but perhaps no less valid. In the end, the question of what would happen if Anakin fought Yoda during Revenge of the Sith doesn't have a single answer. It has multiple answers, each equally valid, each leading to different futures. The fight could go any number of ways depending on the circumstances, the choices made in the moment, the interventions of other characters. What we can say with certainty is that it would be one of the most significant confrontations in Star Wars history, a moment where the fate of the galaxy truly hung in the balance. And perhaps that's the real answer. The reason they didn't fight in the original timeline is because neither outcome would have been satisfying. If Yoda kills Anakin, the prophecy fails and the galaxy suffers without its chosen one. If Anakin kills Yoda, the Jedi lose their greatest teacher, and the path to redemption becomes even harder. The story we got, with Obi-Wan facing Anakin and Yoda facing Palpatine, might be the only version where both survive in some form to eventually fulfill their destinies. But imagining the alternative, exploring what might have happened if they had met in that burning temple, reveals deeper truths about both characters. Yoda's compassion and willingness to fight even when exhausted and heartbroken, Anakin's power and the terrible cost of wielding it without wisdom, the fundamental tension between different approaches to the Force, the complexity of redemption, and whether it can be achieved through defeat or only through choice. These are the questions that make Star Wars meaningful beyond just being an epic space opera. They're questions about human nature, about good and evil, about whether people can be saved from their worst impulses and how that salvation might occur. The confrontation between Yoda and Anakin, whether it happened or not, embodies all of these questions in physical form. So what if Anakin fought Yoda during Revenge of the Sith? The galaxy would change profoundly. One of them might die. Both might survive but transformed. The course of the Empire, the rebellion, and the eventual restoration of the Jedi would all shift in response to that single duel. But whatever the outcome, one truth would remain, that the fight between them represents the eternal struggle within the Force itself, between light and dark, wisdom and power, compassion and conviction. And that struggle continues regardless of who wins any individual battle. Because balance is not a destination but a constant process of choosing light over darkness, wisdom over fear, compassion over hatred. That's the legacy of the duel that never was. Not just an exciting fight between two powerful characters, but a window into the deeper themes that make Star Wars resonate across generations. The question of whether Anakin could have been stopped, whether Yoda could have saved him or would have had to kill him, whether redemption is possible for those who've committed unforgivable acts. These aren't questions with easy answers, and perhaps that's why the confrontation never happened in canon. Some questions are more valuable unanswered, left for each of us to ponder and decide for ourselves. The lightsaber ignites. Green blade versus crimson. But this isn't Obi-Wan facing Anakin on Mustafar. This is something far more dangerous. Master Yoda stands in the Jedi Temple Council chamber. Bodies of younglings surround him. And across the smoking wreckage, Anakin Skywalker, eyes burning yellow with Sith corruption, raises his weapon. The 900-year-old Grand Master versus the Chosen One, at the peak of his dark side power. This is the duel that should have happened. The confrontation that could have changed everything. One of them will not leave this room alive, and whoever survives will reshape the entire galaxy. Let me show you what happens when the wisest Jedi faces the most powerful Sith Lord ever created. The moment begins with a choice Yoda makes that alters destiny itself. In our original timeline, Yoda traveled to Kashyyyk when Order 66 was executed. He was off-world helping Wookiees when the temple burned. But what if he never left Coruscant? What if some disturbance in the Force, some premonition, kept the Grand Master on the Republic capital that fateful day? Yoda sits in meditation when the darkness hits. Thousands of Jedi dying simultaneously across the galaxy. Their deaths scream through the Force like nothing he's felt in 900 years. But one signature disturbs him more than all the others combined. A presence he's known since the boy was 9 years old. Anakin Skywalker. And he's at the temple, leading the massacre. Yoda moves faster than he has in decades. His age falls away as the Force surges through his small frame. He races through Coruscant's skylanes in a speeder, feeling more Jedi die with each passing second. By the time he reaches the temple, the main assault is over. Bodies litter the stairs. Clone troopers patrol the entrance. And inside, in the heart of what was once a sanctuary of light, Anakin Skywalker completes his transformation into Darth Vader by executing the last group of Jedi younglings. Yoda enters through a side passage, one known only to council members. He moves like a shadow, using the Force to cloud the minds of clone troopers, to slip past their patrols. He ascends through the temple, feeling the echoes of death in every chamber, sensing the dark presence growing stronger. When he reaches the council chamber, he finds Anakin standing among the bodies of the fallen, staring out at the Coruscant skyline, as if he's contemplating what he's become. The Grand Master speaks first. His voice is heavy with sorrow, with disbelief, with the weight of 900 years of training Jedi who trusted him to guide them toward the light. Lost you are, young Skywalker. Lost to the dark side. Anakin turns, and Yoda sees the yellow eyes, the Sith corruption burning in a face he's known since childhood. The Jedi are lost, Master Yoda. I've brought peace to the galaxy. I've done what you never had the strength to do. His voice is different, deeper, touched by darkness but still recognizable. Still Anakin underneath the monster. Yoda's heart breaks. He's seen Jedi fall before, has witnessed the seduction of the dark side across centuries. But this is different. This is the chosen one, the boy prophesied to bring balance to the Force, standing in a room full of murdered children. Deceived you have been, by the dark side, by lies, by fear. Yoda's lightsaber remains at his belt, though his hand rests near it. He's still hoping even now that words might reach whatever remains of Anakin Skywalker. But Anakin laughs, a bitter sound that echoes through the empty chamber. Fear? The Jedi taught me to fear everything. Fear attachment, fear loss, fear my own emotions. Chancellor Palpatine freed me from that fear. He showed me real power, the power to save those I love. He takes a step forward, his lightsaber igniting with that familiar snap hiss, but the blade burns crimson now instead of blue. You're too late, Master Yoda. The Jedi Order is finished. And you're the last piece that needs to be removed. Yoda's ancient eyes close for a moment, accepting what must come next. When they open, his lightsaber is in his hand, its green blade casting eerie shadows in the smoke-filled chamber. Then show me you will. Show me the power the dark side has given you. The words are a challenge, but also a test. Yoda needs to see how far Anakin has fallen, needs to understand if anything of the young Jedi remains. They circle each other slowly. The size difference is almost comical. Yoda barely reaches Anakin's knee, a tiny figure in robes facing a towering warrior in dark leather. But anyone who judges by size alone understands nothing about the Force. Yoda has defeated Sith Lords, has trained generations of Jedi, has survived wars that Anakin's great-grandparents hadn't been born to see. And Anakin, for all his newfound dark power, is barely an hour into being a Sith. He's powerful, perhaps the most naturally gifted Force user in a millennium. But he's raw, undisciplined in the ways of the dark side. Anakin attacks first. It's expected. The dark side feeds on aggression, on action, on imposing your will on the universe. His opening strike is brutal, an overhead slash designed to split Yoda in half. But the Grandmaster isn't there. He's leapt 15 feet straight up, flipping through the air with impossible grace for someone who appears ancient and frail. Yoda's counterattack comes from above, a precise strike aimed at Anakin's shoulder. Anakin blocks, but barely, the force of the impact driving him back a step. The duel accelerates. Anakin unleashes a flurry of attacks, each one powerful enough to shatter stone, each one channeling his rage and his pain and his fear into pure destructive force. This is Form 5, Gemso, the style Anakin mastered under Obi-Wan's tutelage, but corrupted by the dark side into something more vicious. Every strike seeks to overwhelm, to overpower, to dominate. Yoda responds with Form 4 Ataru, the acrobatic style he perfected over centuries. He's a blur of motion, flipping and spinning and striking from impossible angles. His small size transformed from a disadvantage into a weapon. The council chamber becomes a battlefield. Furniture shatters. The holographic projectors spark and die. The great windows overlooking Coruscant crack under the pressure of their conflict. Clone troopers hear the commotion and rush toward the chamber, but when they arrive, they freeze in the doorway. What they witness isn't a fight between two individuals. It's a clash of philosophies, of eras, of light and dark made manifest in physical form. Anakin breaks away from the lightsaber duel and extends his hand. The force surges and a massive chunk of the chamber floor rips free, hurtling toward Yoda like a missile. The Grandmaster's response is instantaneous. His own hand raises and the debris stops in midair, held by opposing force powers. For a moment, neither moves. both channeling enormous energy to control the same object. Then Yoda's fingers twist and the debris explodes into hundreds of fragments. Anakin throws up a force barrier, but some pieces get through, cutting his face, tearing his robes. Blood runs down Anakin's cheek. It enrages him further. He's supposed to be the chosen one, the most powerful Force user alive, and this ancient creature is matching him. He roars and unleashes Force lightning, the ultimate expression of Sith hatred. The blue-white energy crackles across the chamber, seeking Yoda. But the Grand Master absorbs it, his lightsaber blade capturing the lightning and redirecting it harmlessly. Learned this from Count Dooku, you did. Showed it to you. I will. Done properly. Yoda releases his own lightning, but it's different. More controlled, more focused, somehow purer, despite being the same dark side technique. It forces Anakin to defend, to give ground, to recognize that raw power alone won't win this fight. The realization infuriates him. Everything Palpatine promised, all the power of the dark side, and he still can't defeat one small Jedi Master who should be in a retirement home. They crash together again, lightsabers moving too fast for normal eyes to follow. 7 strikes in 2 seconds, 11 blocks. A slash that would have taken Yoda's head if he hadn't ducked. A stab that would have pierced Anakin's heart if he hadn't twisted aside. They're both breathing hard now, both drawing on reserves of strength that can't last forever. Yoda is ancient, his body protesting every flip and jump despite the Force sustaining him. Anakin is injured, not just from this fight, but from the emotional trauma of what he's done, the younglings he's killed, the life he's destroyed. Outside the temple, Obi-Wan Kenobi arrives. He's seen the security recordings, knows what Anakin has done, and he's come to stop his former apprentice. But when he enters the temple, when he feels the Force signatures clashing in the council chamber, he realizes he's not needed. Or perhaps he realizes he's not capable. The power being thrown around up there is beyond anything he could survive. Yoda and Anakin are fighting on a level that only the absolute masters can reach. Obi-Wan can only watch, can only hope, can only pray that somehow both of them survive. Back in the council chamber, Yoda makes a decision. Words failed. Combat is proving inconclusive. There's only one option left. He must touch Anakin's mind directly, must confront the darkness within through the Force itself. It's dangerous, potentially fatal, because touching a mind consumed by the dark side is like reaching into fire. But it's the only way to know if Anakin Skywalker still exists under the corruption. The next time their blades lock, Yoda doesn't push Anakin away. Instead, he holds the lock, stares up into those yellow eyes, and plunges his consciousness into Anakin's mind. What he finds horrifies him. The darkness is vast, overwhelming, fed by decades of fear and pain and attachment. Yoda sees Anakin's mother dying in his arms. He sees Padme, pregnant and terrified, the obsession that drove Anakin to this point. He sees the promises Palpatine made, the lies about power over death, the seduction of the dark side disguised as love. But deeper, buried beneath layers of corruption and rage, Yoda senses something else. A spark. Small, fragile, nearly extinguished, but still there. Anakin Skywalker has not been completely consumed. There's still good in him, still a piece of the Jedi he was. Yoda reaches for that spark, tries to fan it into flame, tries to remind Anakin of who he was before the fear took over. Remember, you must. Remember the Jedi you were. Remember Qui-Gon, who believed in you. Remember Obi-Wan, who loved you as a brother. Remember Padme, who you claimed to protect, but whose trust you have shattered. The words, delivered directly into Anakin's consciousness, hit harder than any physical blow. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, the yellow fades from his eyes. The real Anakin surfaces, sees what he's done, sees the bodies of the younglings, understands the magnitude of his fall. The horror is absolute, the grief is unbearable. And in that moment of clarity, he wants to die. He wants Yoda to kill him, to end the monster he's become. But Palpatine anticipated this. The Sith Lord's conditioning goes deep, and the moment Anakin wavers, that conditioning activates. The dark side surges back with renewed fury, fed by Anakin's self-hatred, by his horror at his own actions, by the despair that comes from recognizing what he's done. The spark Yoda tried to reach is buried again, deeper this time, and Anakin erupts with power that sends the Grand Master flying across the chamber. Yoda crashes into the far wall hard enough to crack the stone. He slides to the floor, his small body battered, his ancient bones protesting. He's exhausted. The mental contact drained him more than the physical combat. But he forces himself to stand, to raise his lightsaber one more time, because if he falls, the last hope of stopping Anakin falls with him. Anakin advances, his face twisted with rage and pain and something that might be tears. "You should have left me alone." I was finally at peace. I had finally accepted what I needed to become. Yoda realizes the terrible truth. Anakin knows what he's done is monstrous. He knows he's destroyed everything he claimed to love, but he's too far gone to turn back, so he's chosen to embrace the darkness completely rather than face the guilt. It's a kind of madness, a psychological break that makes him more dangerous than a true believer in the dark side would be. A true Sith accepts their evil. Anakin is trying to outrun his conscience by burying it in atrocity. They clash again, and this time Anakin is winning. His strikes are heavier, his force attacks more brutal, his entire being focused on destroying the one person who dared to show him the truth of what he's become. Yoda defends brilliantly, but he's fading. Age and exhaustion are catching up. One of Anakin's strikes gets through, grazing Yoda's shoulder and leaving a burn mark on his robes. Another strike shatters Yoda's lightsaber guard, sending the weapon spinning from his hand. Anakin has won. His blade is at Yoda's throat. The Grand Master is disarmed, wounded, exhausted. One thrust and the Jedi Order's greatest teacher dies. One thrust and Anakin's transformation is complete. He hesitates just for a heartbeat and Yoda sees the conflict in his eyes. The spark is still there, still fighting. "Do it you must, if fallen completely you have. Strike me down. Prove to yourself that Anakin Skywalker truly is dead." The words are a final test. If Anakin kills Yoda now, in cold blood, with his opponent disarmed and helpless, then there truly is no hope for redemption. If he hesitates, if he can't bring himself to execute a defeated enemy, then perhaps the light hasn't been completely extinguished. The moment stretches. Anakin's hand trembles. The red blade hums inches from Yoda's throat. Behind them, Obi-Wan has reached the doorway, is watching in horror, ready to intervene even though he knows he can't change the outcome. Then Anakin screams and swings his lightsaber. But not at Yoda. He strikes the wall beside the Grand Master, unleashing all his rage and confusion into destroying the stone instead of killing his opponent. He stumbles backward, his breathing ragged, his eyes flickering between yellow and blue. "I can't. I hate you for what you've shown me, but I can't. I can't kill you." It's the closest thing to an admission of remaining humanity that Anakin can manage. Anakin's eyes snap fully yellow again. The conditioning reasserts itself. He turns back to Yoda, raising his lightsaber, preparing to finish what he started. But Yoda has used the brief respite to recover slightly. He calls his lightsaber back to his hand with the Force and ignites it in one smooth motion. "Face both of us I will, if face me you must." The Grand Master addresses both Sith, accepting that this might be his final stand. Palpatine laughs, a sound like breaking glass. "You are brave, Master Yoda, but foolish. Lord Vader, demonstrate to your old teacher the futility of resistance. Show him the power of the dark side. It's both a command and a test." Palpatine wants to see if his new apprentice can overcome his remaining attachment, his lingering light. If Anakin can kill Yoda, especially now after hesitating once, then his fall will be complete and irreversible. What happens next depends on which path we choose. There are several possible outcomes to this confrontation, each one dramatically altering the future of the galaxy. Let's explore the most likely scenarios and their ripple effects through the timeline. In the first scenario, Anakin overcomes his hesitation. Fueled by Palpatine's dark side compulsion and his own desperate need to prove to himself that he's made the right choice, he attacks Yoda with renewed fury. But this time something is different. He's channeling not just anger but despair. The most dangerous emotion for a Force user, despair strips away restraint, makes you reckless, makes you willing to sacrifice anything to end your pain. The assault is overwhelming. Yoda defends magnificently, his centuries of experience allowing him to predict Anakin's attacks. But even prediction isn't enough against raw power of this magnitude. Anakin doesn't just attack with his lightsaber. He brings down the ceiling. He tears chunks from the walls and hurls them. He channels Force lightning continuously, forcing Yoda to divide his attention between physical and Force-based defense. It's exhausting, impossible to maintain, and eventually, inevitably, Yoda's guard breaks. Anakin's lightsaber pierces Yoda's chest. The Grand Master gasps, his ancient eyes wide with shock and sorrow. Not for himself, because death holds no fear for a Jedi who understands the Force, but for Anakin, for what this act will do to him. With his dying breath, Yoda speaks one final truth. More lost now you are. Killed me you have, but saved yourself you have not. Live with this, you must. Live with all of it. Then his body collapses, and 900 years of wisdom passes into the Force. The impact of Yoda's death ripples across the galaxy instantly. Every Force-sensitive being feels it, from the strongest Jedi survivors to untrained children who don't understand why they suddenly feel crushing grief. Obi-Wan, still hidden in the doorway, staggers under the weight of loss. First the Order, then Anakin's betrayal, and now Yoda. Everything is gone. Everyone he loved or respected is dead or corrupted. The despair nearly breaks him, but Anakin's reaction is worse. Killing Yoda doesn't bring him peace or certainty. Instead, it confirms his worst fear, that he's become exactly the monster he always feared he'd become. He looks at the small body on the floor, at the Jedi Master who trained generations of knights, who survived centuries of conflicts, who represented everything good and wise about the Order, and he killed him. Not in self-defense, not in fair combat, but in service to a Sith Lord's command. The horror threatens to shatter what remains of Anakin's sanity. He would scream, would rage, would perhaps even turn on Palpatine in that moment. But the Emperor is ready for this. Palpatine moves quickly, placing his hand on Anakin's shoulder, pouring dark side energy into his apprentice, using Sith techniques to channel Anakin's guilt and horror into cold, sustainable hatred. You have done well, Lord Vader. You have proven your commitment to our cause. The old fool's death was necessary. He represented everything weak about the Jedi. Now, we will build something stronger. The conditioning works, but imperfectly. Anakin accepts the identity of Darth Vader fully, buries Anakin Skywalker deep beneath layers of darkness and denial. But the crack in his psyche caused by killing Yoda never fully heals. In this timeline, Vader is even more brutal, more merciless, because he's constantly trying to prove to himself that his choices were right. Every rebel he kills, every planet he subjugates, every atrocity he commits is an attempt to justify the moment he struck down the Grand Master of the Jedi Order. Palpatine is pleased with his new enforcer, but also wary. Vader is powerful, perhaps too powerful. Killing Yoda has elevated him beyond what Palpatine expected. The Emperor begins planning contingencies, ways to control his apprentice if he becomes a threat. Even while publicly celebrating Vader as the Empire's greatest weapon, the Jedi Order is completely destroyed in this timeline. With both Yoda and soon after Obi-Wan dead, killed by Vader's hand when he's discovered in the temple, there's no one left to train future Jedi. The few survivors scatter, go into deep hiding, never to resurface. The knowledge of the Force begins to fade from the galaxy, becoming legend and myth within a generation. Padme's fate is also sealed in this timeline. When Vader goes to Mustafar to eliminate the Separatist leaders, she follows him as in our original timeline. But this version of Vader, fresh from killing Yoda and hardened even further, doesn't hesitate when she questions his actions. He Force chokes her with cold efficiency, killing her and their unborn children. Luke and Leia Skywalker are never born. The hope they represented, the redemption they eventually brought their father, vanishes with them.